The transport vessel Noridian Dawn shuddered as it dropped from hyperspace, red emergency lights bathing the cramped interior in crimson urgency. Captain James Reeves gripped his harness as the ship's dying system screamed warnings through failing speakers. "All personnel, prepare for emergency landing," the AI announced with eerie calm before its voice dissolved into static. James had exactly 12 seconds to brace himself before the vessel plowed into unknown soil. When consciousness returned, he tasted copper and dirt. The harness had saved his life, but left deep bruises across his chest. Groaning, James released the buckle and stumbled through the twisted wreckage of what had been humanity's fastest scout ship. Smoke curled from shattered consoles, and the acrid smell of burning insulation filled his nostrils. The exit hatch had been torn away entirely, offering a view of wherever fate had deposited him. James grabbed his survival pack and rifle before climbing through the gap into alien daylight. Twin suns hung in a violet sky above a landscape of silver grasslands that rolled toward distant purple mountains. The vegetation shimmered with an internal luminescence, beautiful and utterly foreign. James checked his wrist display. Atmosphere registered as breathable, gravity slightly lighter than Earth standard, and most importantly, the emergency beacon was transmitting. Help would come eventually. He just had to survive until then. The crash site occupied a small clearing, and James set about establishing a basic perimeter. He was 3 hours into this task when he heard them approaching through the silver grass. Voices, multiple speakers, definitely humanoid in cadence, but speaking a language his translator struggled to parse. James moved behind the wreckage, rifle ready but pointed down. First contact protocols emphasized caution over aggression. They emerged from the grass like figures from mythology. 7 warriors, each standing roughly 6 feet tall, their bodies covered in fitted armor that seemed grown rather than forged. The material had an organic quality, dark green with veins of bioluminescence tracing intricate patterns. But what struck James immediately was that every single one appeared distinctly feminine in form, with long hair ranging from deep crimson to pale silver secured in practical braids. The lead warrior stopped at the clearing's edge, her golden eyes widening as they locked onto James. She said something sharp in her language, and the others immediately spread into a combat formation, weapons appearing in their hands with fluid grace. James slowly raised his hands, letting the rifle hang on its sling. "Peaceful contact," he said clearly, knowing the translator would catch the intent even if the words failed. "I mean no harm. My ship crashed." The leader stepped closer, her gaze intense and searching. She said something that the translator rendered as approximate concepts rather than direct translation. Impossible being. Wrong shape. What manner of creature? "I'm human," James replied, speaking slowly. "From Earth. Can you understand me?" Her head tilted, confusion clear in her expression. She approached with cautious steps, moving like a predator evaluating prey. When she stood only a few feet away, she reached out one gloved hand toward his face. James held still as her fingers traced the line of his jaw, his features, clearly cataloging differences. Her eyes widened further, and she turned to her companions, speaking rapidly in that musical, alien tone. The translator caught fragments, face structure anomalous, body configuration unprecedented, voice frequency lower than possible range, skin without proper markings. Another warrior, this one with silver hair, responded with what sounded like skepticism. The leader shook her head emphatically and made a gesture at James that the translator interpreted as "examine closer permission request." Examine what exactly? James asked, tension creeping into his shoulders. The leader's hands moved to his jacket collar. James stepped back instinctively. Whoa, hold on. Personal space. But 6 warriors now surrounded him, their expressions fascinated rather than hostile. The leader spoke again, her tone carrying notes of academic urgency. Reveal configuration. Confirm hypothesis. This matter transcends protocol. Look, I'm happy to answer questions, but maybe we could establish some basic communication first? James tried to circle away, but they moved with him, maintaining the perimeter. The silver-haired warrior said something that made the others laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The leader nodded and reached for James again, this time catching his jacket before he could retreat further. The fabric tore with surprising ease under her enhanced strength. "Hey!" James protested, grabbing at his jacket, but another warrior had already seized his shirt from behind. More hands joined, not aggressive but insistent, and he heard seams popping as they literally pulled his uniform apart in their eagerness. "Stop, stop, stop," James tried, but they were too focused, too driven by whatever conclusion they'd reached. In seconds, they'd reduced his shirt to rags hanging from his shoulders, exposing his chest to the alien air. The warriors froze, staring. Complete silence fell over the clearing. The leader reached out with a trembling hand, fingers hovering inches from James's skin. When she finally made contact, pressing her palm flat against his chest, she gasped audibly. Her eyes met his, wide with something between shock and wonder. "Impossible," she whispered, and this time the translator rendered it perfectly. "A male. An actual male." The other warriors crowded closer, their hands joining the first, touching his arms, his shoulders, his face with an almost reverent curiosity. They spoke over each other in rapid streams of their language, and the translator struggled to keep pace with fragments of meaning. Structure confirmed gender dimorphism. Muscle density suggests combat adaptation. Facial hair growth indicates maturation. Voice resonance confirms hormonal configuration. This cannot be. Our histories speak of males only as myth. Ancient tales. Children's stories. James found himself at the center of a storm of fascinated examination, their touches clinical yet charged with profound significance. He'd been trained for many first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared him for this particular cultural collision. "Where I come from," he managed, his voice tight with discomfort. "We have males and females both. Roughly equal numbers." This statement caused an even greater reaction. The warriors stepped back as if he'd announced something religiously significant. The leader's hand went to a device at her belt, and she spoke into it with urgent authority. "Command, this is Patrol 7, requesting immediate priority transport. We have encountered an unprecedented situation. A male specimen. Repeat, an actual male life form. Conscious and communicating." Static answered her, then a voice heavy with skepticism demanded confirmation. The leader aimed her device at James, presumably transmitting video. The response was immediate and explosive. Multiple voices erupted from the communicator, all speaking over each other in tones ranging from disbelief to excitement, to what sounded like religious fervor. Within minutes, the grass erupted with activity as more warriors emerged from concealment. Then vehicles rose over the horizon, sleek craft that moved without visible propulsion. They landed in rapid succession, disgorging more warriors, then what appeared to be scholars in different colored robes, then officials in elaborate ceremonial armor. All of them stopped and stared when they saw James standing bare-chested among the torn remains of his uniform, surrounded by the original patrol. An older warrior, her hair pure white and her armor marked with complex symbols of rank, approached with measured steps. Her golden eyes held depths of intelligence and authority that made James straighten unconsciously. "I am Commander Lyra of the Eternal Sisterhood," she said, and the translator rendered her words with perfect clarity, suggesting she was using some kind of universal language mode. In 3,000 years of recorded history, Our civilization has never encountered a male of any species. We believed sexual dimorphism to be a primitive evolutionary dead end abandoned by all advanced life. James cleared his throat. I can see how my arrival might be surprising then. Lyra's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to identify. Surprising is insufficient. You represent a fundamental challenge to our understanding of biology, evolution, and civilization itself. We are a society of parthenogenetic reproduction, perfect genetic transmission from mother to daughter without variation or loss. We believe this the only possible path to advancement. And now? James asked. Now we must reconsider everything, Lyra said softly. She gestured, and an attendant immediately brought forward a robe, which Lyra herself draped over James's shoulders with careful formality. Please forgive the enthusiasm of my warriors. They meant no disrespect. They simply encountered something they believed existed only in ancient myths and children's tales. The original patrol leader stepped forward, her face flushed with what might have been embarrassment. I take full responsibility for inappropriate contact. The discovery overwhelmed proper protocol. James adjusted the robe, grateful for the coverage. I understand. Culture shock works both ways. Where I'm from, we'd be equally surprised by an entire civilization of one gender. This sparked an immediate babble of questions from the assembled crowd. Lyra raised her hand for silence, and the discipline was instant and absolute. You will be brought to our capital as an honored guest, S.